Hey there, CPO here, and I'm going to start working on the head assembly for the Taro 450 Pro V2 build. I'm learning as I go here, so I think I have a pretty good grasp of what I want to do. I'm going to work on the teardown of this, and basically going to make sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be, and then get it all Loctited up. And then I'm going to go to the installation of the main shaft and the swash, and I will not be messing with the links just yet. I don't have a caliper yet, and I'll get one. I'll get a digital caliper probably in the next couple days, and then once I have a caliper, I will be able to measure those links to where they need to be. So at any rate, I'm going to start this build. I have my trusty new Align hex driver, which is going to come in really handy. So the first thing I want to do is take this thing apart and get to going here. So let me remove these screws and nuts here. Now I'm going to put these right there where we can see them. Alright, the next thing I want to do is there's the main shaft bolt here. I'm going to take it out, set it aside as well, put the nut on it so I don't lose it, and so the screw doesn't roll around on me. Set that right there. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is pull off the blade grips. And I'm going to do that by coming in here. Now, I realize that many of the build videos suggest that you need an Allen wrench on this side as well as on this side. To break that free. These are really loose in here, so I don't necessarily have to do that. But you may. So now that that is free, I can pull that whole assembly out. Now there's going to be your thrust bearings in here and that, so I'm just going to leave that assembly right there for now. There is a shim right here that we'll want to pull out, and then I want to do the same thing to this side. And just pull that out till it's comes free. Okay. Pull the whole assembly out, and there's that shim. Alright, so now I can disassemble these guys here, and I'm just basically going to dump it upside down because I know what's in there. So I have this shim that goes on the inside, then I have the bearing, and I'll show you which one goes where here in a second. And pretty much that's how that's going to go. Now I'm using the manual, the build manual here, and there are some important points about the thrust bearing, and that is which direction it faces. So there's a outside and an inside. The Align bearings actually say in and out. These do not. These are plain. They don't say anything. Whoops. So what you have to do is know what the inner diameter is. And according to the manual here, if you're looking at how this thing is going to go, right? It's going to go on like this. So facing, I need the larger inner diameter closest, and then the bearings, and then the smaller inner diameter. Okay, so that's how that's going to go, and I'll show you a little bit more close-up detail here in a second. I'm going to go ahead and line out the other side though. So this is the assembly here for the main housing, and this right here is the feathering shaft, right? This little shaft inside here, and this is held in place really by two rubber bushings. Now normally this would slide out pretty easy, however it's in there really tight, so tight that it barely moves, and I was afraid to do much with it originally, so I sought some help. I called a friend. No, I didn't. I checked the internet. That's where I check, you know. Went to rchelp.com, got on the forums, and was asking some people. They're like, oh yeah, it's just held in there by those bushings. It is really snug. So I can pull it out by pushing and working on it. Get this thing out of there. There we go. So there's the one side. And then I'm going to push this back through to push out that other bushing. And then there's the feathering shaft. So this little guy wants to roll around. My trick to solving those problems, I'll give you some focus here. Tape is miraculous. If you got any screws or whatever, shafts rolling around on your workspace, just put a piece of tape in, roll it on top of itself so it's sticky on all sides, and give you something to stick the tape to, or the rod to. So that's that. And next we're going to look at, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take all these parts that I already pulled out, and I'm just going to wipe them down, get them nice and clean, make sure that there's nothing, you know, no machining oil or anything like that on them. I have some brake clean. This is what I'm going to use only because I happen to have it in the garage, just a parts cleaner. So I'm just going to spray a little bit on a paper towel, and I'm going to use it to clean off some of these metal parts. I am going to leave these bearings alone. Oops. So there's a bearing here and a bearing on the inside of this thing. I don't know if you can see it in there. At any rate, each one of these has two bearings still in there. They're pressed in there fairly tight. I could get them out. There's no point in it. I'm not going to do anything with them anyway, so I'm just going to leave them in there. But just know that they're in there. And with that said, I'm going to get to cleaning, and I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. Went through basically a wipe down of all the metal parts. I did the feathering shaft, and pretty much just a wipe down, get all the machining oil off and things like that from manufacturer. I was looking at the manual, and I have to share this because I think it's hilarious. That you know, the manual. I love Chinese to English conversions. This is the Met Al Main Rot Row holder. Rot Row just reminds me of I don't know, it makes me laugh. But anyway, this manual is very similar to the Align manual. Lots of very similar verbiage, and even some of the parts are called the same thing. So it's kind of fun to look at. But at any rate, this is the part, remember I was talking about the thrust bearings and how to tell larger diameter, inner diameter, how they go together. So I will show you that. So basically, get these two guys here. One of them has a smaller hole, and one of them has a larger hole. It's quite simple. So the one, this one right here, has the smaller hole of the two, and because of that, it's going to go towards the outside, towards the screw, and then this one's going to go towards the inside, towards the feathering shaft, the larger one. So that's how that looks. And then also on your bearings, they have a right side and a wrong side. This is the side that faces the screw. This is the side that faces, whoops, that's hard to hold on to. They're rolly. I guess that's a good thing. This is the side that faces the feathering shaft, and the difference is it's got the cup, basically the place that you can put some grease in. So we're going to grease these things up here in a second as well. Alright, so that is that. This is how it's all going to go back together. So it's time to put this thing back together, and I'm basically following the same method that is used in the rc-help.com 450 Trex build. Great build. There are some things that I'm finding that are going to be specific to this Taro model that aren't addressed in that build, so I'll try and remember to cover those, but a lot of the stuff is very similar. So what I need to do now is put some grease on this thrust bearing, and I've got a little grease gun from the garage that actually had I used for greasing bearings, I believe, on an ATV. So I just got a little grease here. So I'm going to use this to work in to this cup. And I'm going to make a good mess. And then, as suggested, rolling it around will be helpful. Grab the other one. Alright, got these two greased up. And now I'm going to wipe my hands off. Okay, so now we can start putting this thing together. So, following the instructions, actually, first of all, what I'm going to do is put this shim. I'm going to set the focus about right here so you can see what I'm working on. I'm going to put this shim inside of here and get it down there, and as recommended, you can use your Allen wrench to get it flattened in there. So that's going to be helpful there. Next thing I want to do is take the feathering shaft, put the inner one, which is the one with the largest hole, if I can pick it up. And that is with the cup facing inside. Then the bearing goes in with the cup facing down. And then this next one goes so that's how that looks. Then I'm going to take the screw, put the washer on it, and that's just going to go right through there, and I'm just going to lightly put it on there to hold it. And this whole thing is going to go inside. Oops. And then get my little shim on there. So I have not thread locked this yet. I can do that now. I'm going to do it here in a minute after I get everything together. So the next thing I need to do here is get my rubber bushings back in. So I'm going to press those in and get them nice and flat. Flatten them down on the tabletop. So now they're pressed in there nicely. Okay, so now that I have this assembly all together, basically what I can do is I'm going to lube this up. And then I'm going to push it through these bushings. Now it's helpful to have an Allen wrench. On the back side to help push. These bushings are really tight. So I got through the first one. And basically, in doing this, I popped off the other one. That's okay. So what I'm doing is just seating it with my fingers around that feathering shaft. It is very tight. There we go. So now that is on there. And then what we'll do is put together the other side. I still haven't Loctited that. I'm going to wait until the very end to make sure I have everything where I want it before I Loctite it. But now I can put that other bushing on. And again, I'm just going to make sure this is as pressed in flat as I can get it. Okay. Alright, so now that I have this one together, I'm going to put the other side on. And I'm going to do this one. So one cool thing about this Align is I can pop it off the back, and then that sucker will stand upright. So the washer goes first, then the outside race pointing in, or up in this case, then the actual bearing pointing up as well, Then the next race facing down, basically encapsulating that. And then I've got this little shim here, but I'm going to put this shim in first and get it flattened in there. Then this whole thing should push through like that. Get this in there. And I should be able to screw this down. Okay. So those are snug, not tight, because I still need to pull them out and Loctite them. But now they're cleaned and properly lubed. Everything looks good. So these aren't, they're pretty smooth. They're not completely tight yet though, but so let me do that next. I will Loctite these bad boys in. Alright, so I have Loctited and tightened down both sides here, and as you can see, it's pretty smooth. I put the little blade bolts back in, so it's pretty nice. The other thing I did is went in and Loctited these and got them down, and they're, as you can see, nice and free. These I could not tighten down all the way just yet because I need to get the main shaft in there, because if I tighten these down it's going to tighten around the main shaft. So I'm going to work on that next. But that's that. The other thing I do need to do here is I have my little cap here. I'm going to put it in. Got a little screw, and I'm not going to Loctite this in yet, as I'm told not to, because we got more work to do here. Well, that's a booger. Alright, so that's just on there, just snug. That's that. So next I have the swash. I have all these balls that I'm sure have not had Loctite on them. Matter of fact, they're all loose. So the next thing I'm going to do is go through, Loctite these. I have the main shaft here that we're going to put in. And then I have these guys, the linkage ball ends that I'm going to Loctite onto the head. So I'm going to do that, and we'll be back. Alright, so I have the swash. All the balls have been tightened down, Loctited. I added these link balls, ball links, to the blade grips, and I think that's all I've done since I last was with you. The next thing I want to do is put on the main shaft. Now this has a collar on it, it's adjustable collar. I'm not going to Loctite yet these adjustment or these screws to hold them down. But I do want to point out something that I had to figure out, because it doesn't seem like many people are addressing this. I think if you know it, you know it. If you don't, though, it's kind of hard to figure out. But there are two ends of this. One end has the hole closer to the end than the other. Now in this particular case, a good giveaway is the fact that the collar is going to point down. This little lip here is going to point down into the motor, the main bearings. So as a matter of fact, here's one of these now. This would go in like this, with that little lip resting there. So that would be a good clue as to which direction is up and which direction is down, assuming the collar is in the right position to begin with. I don't necessarily trust that the collar was installed the right way, so I wanted to rely on these holes as my guide. And the information I'm getting is that the one with the hole closest to the end goes down, and the one with the hole furthest away goes up into the head. So now what I need to do is put my swash onto the main shaft. Remember, following the directions of this collar's pointing down, the hole closest to the end is going down, and this should freely move up and down. And once I have that, what I need to do is make sure that these are in the right position, and that is across like that. So in this case I can read the branding upright, but it's basically going to go across itself and then back. So and then the shaft will go in, and then now I need to get that hole lined up. So I'm going to push it all the way to the end and then back it out and turn it till I can find that hole. And there it is. That allows me to put this collar screw in. I'm going to put a little thread lock on this. That in there, and that should go right through. And then there's a tiny little nut that goes on the other side. I got it pretty tight with my hands. I'm going to cheat and use this ball link plier just to give it something to hold on to, and that feels pretty good. Now I can go in here and tighten this the rest of the way down. I've already put some thread locker on it. Alright, and that's what that looks like. So now the next step is going to be to attach these to the swash, and I'm just going to pick two and clip them on. So I'll take that one's on, and then directly across from it, that one's on. And there we go. Now I'm going to leave this collar where it's at, because I don't know if it needs to be adjusted or not. But that, in a sense, is most of the head assembly. Now I do have some other things to do. You know, the links, I need to put the ends on them, and then I need to attach, but like I said, I don't have a caliper right now. So I'm going to save that. Anything that requires measuring, I'm going to have to wait on. But hey, I feel like I'm making progress already. And that's important. So that's it for now, and I'll catch you on the next one.